All right. So, welcome. This is the third week of the Authentic Leadership course. And today we have a guest speaker, Carolyn Ellis, who is a facilitator and strategist with organizations up in Toronto, Canada. And I will have her introduce herself as well. I like to always start out first by and I'm pretty sure, Kelly, I'm not sure if you were on before when Kathy was and Joanna. So I would just like to give you all a moment to introduce yourself to each other. Maybe, just I always have something fun, I think it's fun. Last time I asked what was good about the dark. So today I'm going to ask something, which is coming around the corner, which has to do with food. So what is your favorite food item at Thanksgiving? And Carolyn, I know that isn't there a Canadian Thanksgiving as well?
Yeah, we had it a month ago.
Yes, I remember. So
you can
talk about your favorite food as well. So I will have to say my favorite food item for Thanksgiving, I like it turkey the day after because I like slicing it thin, putting an obscene amount of mayonnaise on top and a little salt and pepper. And I gross everyone out, which means there's more for me. That would be my favorite. So let's see.
Strategy.
I know, right? It's horrible. So I'm going to start with Kathy. If you want to just introduce yourself to everyone else and your favorite food item for Thanksgiving.
So, although it says Catherine, I go by Kathy. Either one is totally fine. My favorite food for Thanksgiving is without a doubt pumpkin pie. I can eat it for breakfast. I can eat it. I mean, it's bad to have in the house because I just absolutely love it. And I am a nurse practitioner here in Missoula, and I have my own practice.
Cool. Thank you. And then Joanna.
Great. Hi, my name is Joanna. I am a grant manager with a renewable energy nonprofit that's based in Colorado. And I'm living in Missoula, Montana, though. My favorite Thanksgiving food is gravy, and basically anything that gravy can go on. Gravy makes everything better. So
I like that. I think you're absolutely correct.
Yes.
You must have a wonderful recipe for it then.
I don't know if I've ever met a gravy I didn't like.
The package is really iconic.
Yeah, well, I just really love like sauces and dips in general. Like that's my favorite category of food, I suppose.
Nice.
It's just fun.
And Kelly.
So I live in Missoula. I'm Kelly. I, as you now know, work in travel, but for the last year I've been working at the courthouse in Justice Court because travel took a nosedive there briefly. So I'm actually just now transitioning back into travel, which is exciting. And then my favorite Thanksgiving food is, you're all gonna think this is gross, but it's the cranberry sauce, only from the can with the can lines on it and it jiggling.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
Wow.
Just straight slices of that and anything, and I'm there. I know it's family tradition and it's awful, but
no, I like it as well. I will say I'm right there with you.
That's amazing.
Carolyn, how about you? What's your favorite Thanksgiving?
Well, I mean, stuffing.
Oh,
Stuffing.
So good.
There's always like, who's got more stuffing? Do you have enough other food on your plate to justify the amount of stuffing that you just took from it? So it's always a thing that we all kind of monitor closely, make sure there's enough, because stuffing is just, I think, great. And why do I just wait for Thanksgiving or maybe Christmas to have stuffing? Because it's possible to do it other times of the year, but maybe it's just because I only have it those few times that I love it so much. But it's a huge family favorite, and definitely one we have to learn better cooperative skills around. So but I think actually when you were each talking, I was like, Oh yeah, I wasn't with you so much on the rings, but like the cranberry sauce for sure. The gravy, it's like, oh yeah. I mean, like, there's probably pumpkin pie. Yeah, no, it is a really special kind of a meal all around. Just to have the
Mhm.
tradition, have the conversations, have the family, have the have the great food.
It
So
is.
yum.
Yeah.
Man, I've already had my, but I'm salivating. I know you guys are having yours just next week, right? So I'm gonna have to do a little extra something for myself.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So
inspired.
I just want to check in with everyone and see if there are any questions to this point about the materials. We've been working through some kind of like hiccups here and there that people have graciously pointed out to us since this is our first time working in Mighty Networks. We did this before in Moodle. So there's been some issues with people getting their responses when they enter into the forms. And I believe that we have fixed that. You have to enter your email in. We don't, see it or have access to it. So, I mean, I do have access to it. I shouldn't say that I don't have access to it, but I'm not looking at it to, would only to be supportive if you had some questions. But so we did fix that. And then the other thing that people were having some challenges with was moving forward hi Shannon, moving forward throughout the coursework. And so there's a little glitch to it we discovered, which is you have to progress in order for the next class to release the next section. So you can't skip forward. You have to kind of actually go through everything and say that you completed it for it to go on, for you to have access to the next part. Besides that, were there any other issues people have been experiencing, or just do you have general questions about the materials or comments about the materials? Okay. Oh, people are coming on in now. All right. So Shannon, we went around and did some introductions, and we're not gonna do a repeat, but I will have, and I'm gonna wait till Silas comes in here. But I will have you introduce yourselves, and I'll do I can do a real quick who everybody is. Oh, it's Tracy. Oh, fantastic. Hi, Tracy. That's a different name. So, so Shannon, do you want to just give a brief who you are, where you're located, and then what's your favorite Thanksgiving food? And then my test is to repeat back everybody else's.
Oh man. Well, I didn't hear anybody else's, so I'm gonna fail that one, but that's okay.
No, I'm gonna repeat it back. That's my test.
Okay, perfect.
Not your test.
So hi everybody. I'm really excited. This is the first lab I've been able to attend. My name's Shannon. I live here in Missoula, Montana. I'm actually on campus at the university right now, just wrapping up my work day. And my favorite Thanksgiving food is green bean casserole.
Oh, a new one. Okay. So Tracy, before you go, I'm going to introduce somebody else and say what their favorite food is. So Kathy Powell is a nurse practitioner here in Missoula. She also is the director of the board at the YWCA, and she loves pumpkin pie. She will eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I have a feeling she'll even snack on it in between. Pretty sure. Tracy, how about you? Do you want to introduce yourself and what your favorite Thanksgiving item is?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry I was late. I am Tracy, and I work at the University of Montana at the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities. I'm part of a research and training center there that does disability research. I'm also on the board of Mountain Home in Missoula, if you're familiar, which is an organization that supports young women and their kids and provides wraparound services. And my favorite Thanksgiving meal or thing, I love sweet potatoes. I'm a sweet potato kind of girl. Um,
Delicious. I love that we are actually getting the whole entire meal here. So Joanna works for the Rocky Mountain Institute, which is in Aspen, but she lives here in Missoula, and she loves gravy, all kinds of gravy. No favorite recipe, just make it brown and put it down. And she's very excited about that. Kelly is in adventure travel, and she was working at the Justice Court, but now travel is opening. So, and she likes to, it's all about cold places where I think you can have 2 boards on your feet to ski. So it's Norway, the colder regions, and she's originally from Maine, and she likes cranberries, but it has to come out of the can with the lines on it and jiggle. And Carolyn is our guest speaker today, and she is hailing from Toronto, Canada, and they had their Thanksgiving a month ago. So we're causing her deep salivation, and she loves stuffing, and or dressing, stuffing, dressing. Also, like that really, I've learned it depends, like if you put it in the bird or you cook it separate from the bird. That is the difference between stuffing and dressing.
Is it? I just learned something new tonight. Thank
That is
you.
the difference between stuffing and dressing. If you actually cook it in, which, you know, people will scare you and say that you can get a lot of illnesses from that, which I don't know, maybe you can. I'm not going to say anything otherwise on a recording that you can't. And dressing is if you cook it outside. And I like turkey the next day, sliced thin with obscene amounts of mayonnaise on it with salt and pepper and cold, and it's gross. Everyone tells me I'm gross, but that's what I like. I like the whole meal. I just say that because I can't choose from all the actual day of. But
It's kind of remarkable that everybody had a different selection, isn't it?
right.
Like we're the full meal deal here, right? Yeah.
Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday because I actually was raised Jewish, but in a very small, it's hard for people to believe that New Jersey's rural, but I was the only Jewish kid in a school of 600 kids. And so Thanksgiving and Halloween were the only 2 holidays that I felt the same as all the other kids. So I love Thanksgiving to the point where it is a little obscene. It just, yeah, I'm very connected to it, not necessarily for what the holiday stands, but more that it helped me feel normal growing up. So anyway, I'm gonna today we're gonna be talking about resiliency, and resiliency in the workplace, whether you are in a leadership position or and as you all hopefully know by now, if you've been on the labs or have watched them, I honestly believe that every single person at work is important, or every single person that comes to, we are all leaders in our own right. And I don't differentiate between if you have a title as a leader or you actually supervise people. And so resiliency across the board is very critical and very important. And I feel like this last year, 2020 and 2021, those last 2 years have been a really strong lesson for people, more so than they ever expected. And one of the silver linings that I personally believe has come out of the pandemic is that mental health issues have risen to the top, and everybody's mental health issues. I'm, you know, for those of you who have listened to my introductions of what I do for work, I am a licensed clinical social worker and I work in organizations. And so my lens has always been about people feeling connected and being healthy, whether or not it always appears that way in the work that I'm doing. Sometimes I'm doing strategic planning processes and sometimes I'm doing team building processes, but that is the lens that I come in with. And so when it started to become very apparent that we needed to have a society that was more resilient and taught people that it is okay to take care of yourself and to have a greater balance. Nobody liked it when I said that, but I I'm going to stand by it. I think it was one of the biggest lessons that we have coming out of this, and I'm going to ride the wave and keep talking about it a whole lot more. So Carolyn and I know each other because we are, as you know, some of you are in businesses for yourselves here, some aren't, but the Pursue Your Passion program is definitely about businesses. We are in a business group together that is actually international, and she and I bonded because we do a lot of the similar work of facilitation and personal growth and organizational growth. So I thought it was the perfect opportunity for you to meet someone who is running a business, which is a lot of what Pursue Your Passions is about. And then also, though, trains people and teaches people about resiliency. So that is, Carolyn, would you like to say any more about yourself?
Sure. Well, I will just say, first of all, thank you, Rachel, for inviting me to come and speak to your group tonight. And I'm really delighted to meet all of you and really have an important conversation about resiliency and, what does that mean to you? Like, how are you doing with that? And through the course of our conversation tonight, I'm hoping that through sharing, some of my experiences, through some experiences we want to have you have with each other. And I also want to share a tool with you that will support you in accessing greater resilience and adaptability to whatever situation you might be facing, where you're feeling a bit confronted or challenged. So we've designed this this evening session tonight to really be a bit of a mix. So I think Rachel and I were going to kick it off with a bit of a sort of interview style. As she said at the outset, I know a couple of you weren't here. I'm a visual facilitator, an engagement specialist. I do leadership coaching. I'm also the author of a new book called Lead Conversations That Count: How Busy Managers Run Great Meetings. And I think, one of the reasons that Rachel and I are very simpatico with each other, she said that, it's the really, she really cares and sees how the connection between people is so important. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, my kind of overarching thesis of the kind of work that I do in organizations is that, if the relationships that you have with each other as a team are not, authentic, trusting, strong, it doesn't matter what all the other stuff is that you do. It's all going to be a lot harder, a lot less effective, and just create a lot more friction. And I think in the lens of entrepreneurship, though, we can take that back into ourselves, which is, what kind of relationship do you have with your own self? So that sort of, it might not be on your business card, but, the first person you need to be really leading is yourself. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the mindsets and the challenges around that, because goodness, I mean, sure, 2020, 2021 were great examples of why we all need to develop this capability of resiliency and not to feel stuck. And I think there's a quote by Beth Comstock, which is something along the lines of, the rate of change will never be slower than it was today. So this, so if anybody, and I know myself, I've had that experience of like, oh, if I can just get, this next, project finished, then I'm going to be able to sit back and relax a bit. And guess what? The pace of the world changes. We start families, we start businesses, we start relationships, we end relationships, we see children leave the nest. There's constantly a change and a challenge. And I think, if at the core of that you can find that resiliency within yourself to know that no matter, what comes your way, that you have a way to greet it and work with it rather than, resist it, hide from it. That's when we can really allow who we really are to be expressed, whether it's in our families, in our communities, in our businesses, in our places of work. So that's a bit of where we're going to go today. So I'm just going to really invite all of you as we go through our plan for today. Be taking yourselves off mute. We're going to use the chat. We've got a Mentimeter that I'm going to ask you to engage with at various points in time, because really we want this to be not just, you getting to watch, Rachel and I talking to each other, but we want to create a space for us all to talk as a group and for you to talk with each other. And I think this is really where the power of this kind of a learning opportunity in real time will happen. Sound good?
Great.
Okay. All right. So good
Yeah.
stuff.
So I always like to ask you this question about how has resiliency played out in the work that you've done? Meaning, when you enter into an organization and you've had a lot of, years and years of a variety of different groups that you've worked with, what do you find is important with how resiliency looks with individuals in an organization?
I think one of the biggest challenges people face, or that I've seen in organizations, is when there is a disconnect between what people say they're doing and what they actually are doing in practice. So, they have the values on the wall by the elevator, or it's, showing on a television screen somewhere in the, in the cafeteria or something. But then when you start to hear the stories of how people may be speaking to each other or speaking about somebody to somebody else, there's all these little indicators where there's a lack of alignment, and that lack of alignment in organizations can lead to an erosion of trust and psychological safety. So then all of a sudden, when you feel, and I think some of this has really also been exacerbated with what's been happening in the workplace in the last 2 years. Everybody has had to do a massive amount of adoption to working virtually, working remotely, and it's raised, I think there's been some positives from that in terms of, I think there's been a lot of resiliency organizations have had to demonstrate, just because we literally didn't have a lot of other options. We had to figure these things out quickly. And yet, and I think there's been some ways that the technology has in a way allowed maybe a more equal footing for people in terms of power dynamics or being able to speak up than you might find perhaps in a boardroom setting, where some people are just great with jumping right in with the loud comments and dominating the conversation. And that's a little bit harder to do, although some people do still in the virtual meetings. But the resiliency, it's not a skill or something that you innately have. It's really something that you need to choose again and again and again, and to be honest enough to say, I don't know how to, I feel like I'm missing something. Can I understand your perspective better? Can we see this issue more clearly together somehow, so that we can become more clear on what's the problem we're actually trying to respond to or solve. I think that's where a lot of the breakdown, again, breaking down in the relationships, breaking down the communication, the trust. And so, the resiliency is only going to be an outcome of the strength of those earlier qualities.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like that you talk about resiliency in the organization as a disconnect between what they say they're going to do and what they say is the way of being, with how individuals actually react. And it makes me curious where my mind jumps to. I mean, there's so much in what you said that I kind of think about, but where my mind jumps to has to do with then, how do we as individuals be resilient enough to live up to the values that maybe we've agreed upon by choosing to work somewhere, or we've agreed upon by actually choosing those group values.
Well, it's I really think that the organization is only a reflection of the collection of the individuals that are part of that. So I think the first step in anything is, you can't really say, well, do I agree with those values or not? Can I live by the organizational value? Unless you have a clearer reading of what's really important to you. So does integrity matter to you? does, being willing to be vulnerable, is that important? Does being like making the world a better place than how you found it in the morning, does that matter to you? So, we need to start to be clear within ourselves. And then not only do you get a clearer choice whether you're going to adopt and become an ambassador for those organizational values, but you then also have the ability to then also influence and inform those organizational values. Maybe they need to be updated. Maybe they were, they did a big process 20 years ago with a bunch of white men in a room, and it's 2022 almost, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I think, they're not words, they're agreements that we make with ourselves first, with each other, in order to provide some impact. So, a service to the client, like saving farmland, or like there's a cause or some greater mission that those vision and value, like they're in service of that. And not everybody wants to work like that, that's fine. So some people, and I think it's harder for entrepreneurs to do this, and I'd love, curious what you all think about this, but I think that the lines between your personal values and how they're expressed in when you're running your own business, when you're kind of there's just hardly, like, there's no distinction practically between like the personal and the professional. And for some people, they may choose a career path which is a little bit more contained, and because they want to leave work at work and then come home and shift gears. I don't know that many people who do that anymore. I actually think there's a bit of a blurring and bringing the personal. And we've been seeing people's, where they live. We've been seeing it on the screen. We've met people's dogs and cats and small children. So I think there's been a kind of a nice breaking down of some of that, faux formality that we've had, perhaps in a more open organizational setting. It's like, at the end of the day, we're all real people. We're trying to figure out this stuff, and the world is kind of crazy and complex and changing. We got some big issues to solve. So let's get real, let's get connected, and we literally need our best thinking caps on with each other to try to solve some of them. And we better get going.
Yeah. There's so much in what you said again that I love. That was very rich. And I think that your Thrive principles, like, I'd love to just dive right into that, because I think that's really going to help us do that part that you said, which is that we need to live our own values, and we need to really start. They're not just words, they're behaviors, they're ways of being, they're actions in how we are every day.
Well, I'm happy to do that. I think what I'm going to do as a kickoff for that, like, we've been talking a little bit about resiliency, and if I'm just going to put something in the chat here. I'm just going to ask you, if you can, to open a new browser window and go to code number 65460071. And Rachel, I have the capability to share my screen.
I think so. Is it saying no, you don't?
No, I do. That's great. So I'm just going to share my screen for a moment and show you what we're going to do here. I just would love to hear from the folks who are here tonight. When we're talking about resiliency, what does that mean to you? And so you can enter as many definitions or adjectives. So maybe it's just a couple of words or short phrase, but if you can enter it into that code, is everybody able to find that all right? Let me know if you're having any problems. And then we'll just start to see what some people think it means, because it might mean different things or to different people, obviously. So we'll just give that a moment for you to, and you can, if you have a couple of answers, you can just make a couple of entries. That's not a problem. Are you able to get in there yourself, Rachel?
Yeah, it's taken me a memento,
There we go.
I'm being a little slow on the uptake here.
Yeah, no worries. So dedication, strength, determination, love that. Now we're just going to create a little word cloud here. Ooh, how great. Humor. Catherine's got here in the chat, rebounding. Excellent. I love some of these qualities here. Self-care, stamina. Yeah. So, and what I can also do when we complete, I can make sure that Rachel gets the output of this and she can share that back with you as part of tonight's discussion. So we've got some good ideas here about, self-compassion. Yes, moving through. Grace, that's a beautiful word. I love that. So thank you so much for that. And I mean, I think all of these are feeling the feels. Ooh, this is a very eloquent and insightful group. I can tell. I mean, I think technically, the definition of resiliency is speaks to like that ability to bounce back when you're facing a stress or something's gone wrong. So like that, so you may stretch, but you're not going to break and fall apart. That's not the technical dictionary definition of it. But and so those qualities of resiliency, I always like to think of like the surfer who's out there on the board or, paddling out to find that right next wave. And sometimes the waves are big, sometimes they're small, sometimes they are unexpectedly enormous. And you just kind of, you're using your experience, you've got your equipment, but there's always just that moment of that particular unique wave and that particular, part of the ocean or lake that you're in where it's just that moment and you're riding it out and you're just balancing as best as you can. You might go for a big swim and you might actually make it and ride that wave all the way into wherever they like to ride it into. I'm not a surfer, but I've seen them lots and I just think they're incredibly courageous people. So let's just go back to the Menti for a moment. I'm just going to share my screen again and I'm going to put up another question for you now. Just would love to get a sense from the group. Let me just go to the next question. On a scale of 1 to 5, how resilient do you feel you are currently? I know Kelly shared that she's just making a transition back into her, there's been lots of things going on. So I would just be curious to take a pulse of the group where you're at. So we got somebody, often, excellent, yay. A couple of 4s here, sometimes. And you might find that there are certain areas where you are interacting with other people where it might be easier to be more resilient than others. So perhaps if you're running your own business, you might find everything like one person might find it difficult to be resilient because you feel so responsible because it's your business. Another person in that same situation might find it quite easy because it's like, well, it's just up to me. It's different. I think we've got everybody voting here, so that's great. Thanks. So I'm going to dive into the Thrive principles, which is this tool, a series of it's a framework that I developed, and I'll just give you a very brief background where that came from. And we got Catherine there as a 4. High five on that. So really, the Thrive principles. My very first business, I had Brilliance Mastery. Been in business, I think, for a total of 19 years now. And when I left my job, I was the director of development for a large independent school. So I was working in the education sector, doing fundraising and good stuff like that. I started a coaching practice in the area of divorce and separation. And my business was called Thrive After Divorce. And I actually wrote my very first book was called The 7 Pitfalls of Single Parenting, What to Avoid to Help Your Children Thrive After Divorce. So very different from what I'm doing now. And yet in that process, I developed this framework that I call the Thrive principles that I'll share with you. And why did I develop it? Because, well, honestly, I kind of needed it myself. My children were quite young when we separated after a 20-year relationship. So my kids were like they were like 3, 6, and 9. And I didn't know how to navigate the emotional upheaval and the processing of, becoming a single parent and all of that stuff. And so my question was like, how do I not really mess this up so I don't mess my kids up? That was really the thing for me that was important. So Rachel, I do have, does everybody have a copy of the principle, like the handout? Okay.
I didn't give that beforehand.
Okay, no worries. Well, what I'm going to do is I will pull it up here. Oh, that's not it. Let me just, I can go through it like this. I happen to have created it here. So you are going to get something that will look like this. This might be a little bit hard to read, but I did break them out into individual slides. So if you know me, you'll know that I love acronyms. And I know we've just met, but I'll just tell you right now, this is an acronym.
We're seeing your desktop. It's
Oh,
not.
that's not what you want to see. No. Okay, let's try that again. All right, there we go. How's that? Better?
There we go. Yeah, and I'll be sending everyone this. For some reason I thought we did it last time afterwards, Carolyn. So
I can't remember. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah. So what I want to do with you is I'm just going to walk you through these principles, and then we're going to, as I'm doing that, I'd love for you to think about what's a situation that you're facing right now where you could access, you kind of like to be a little bit more confident or a little bit more resilient. So think of a challenge. It could be a challenge that you might be facing at work, could be a challenge that you're facing personally, and then we're going to give you a chance to work in small groups in a breakout group to share what's the challenge that you're facing and which of these principles might be useful for you. So that's the game that we're going to be playing right now. But let me just give you a little framework on this right now. So basically, needs for trust. And this, I think, is it's a foundational principle, like that idea that you know that you can trust yourself, that anything that life throws your way, you can actually handle. I know sometimes that might feel hard to kind of access, but just to know that, especially, and I think, as we get more life experience under our belt, we probably start to believe this more in our maybe 30s, 40s, we might in our teens and 20s. It's like, oh, life is happening to me, and can I get through? It's like, yeah, you can, because I really feel that, I say this to my coaching clients a lot, like, the universe is not out to punish you, it's out to polish you. So sometimes when we face those challenges, it's not an indication that we're not capable. It's because we're getting another opportunity to practice applying some skills or choosing a different mindset. And so this trust as the starting principle is really a way to remind yourself how important it is to start with that foundation and do what's necessary. And we certainly saw some of those ingredients, the self-compassion, the self-care, that strength, that will really support the trust being accessible to you. The next one is honesty. And if you have any questions or comments as we're going through this, just feel free to throw your hand up or you take yourself off mute and say, hey, Caroline, I just want to ask about that. That's fine. Honesty, being willing to tell the truth to myself and others. So this is another thing. And I think, Rachel, this kind of ties back a little bit to the organizational resiliency question that we started with, which was when people are saying one thing, but you see that the reality is something different, and people are maybe putting on a brave face or a facade. It's hard to work with that. So and at least for yourself, just think of these principles as guiding principles for you as an individual human being in this planet Earth at this point in time in our existence. Being able to be honest to yourself, say, you know what, I'm really kind of scared, or I feel like I actually could do this really well. And I'm noticing that I want to kind of minimize that. So be honest with yourself. And eventually we can also express that honestly and make honest requests of other people as well. But it does need to start with a willingness to be honest with yourself. Responsibility. There's so much going on in the world. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the only thing that you have any control over is your thoughts, your words, and your actions. Sometimes it's hard to control our thoughts. This is why sometimes we might need to go out for a walk, take an action that will help to support a change of state. Take some action to support your self-care needs. Again, being honest that you might need to take a break. But I think we spend a lot of time, and I think honestly, women were a little bit culturized to taking care of other people and trying to figure out, well, they probably did this because of that. It's like, well, how about if we spent a fraction of that time that we spend analyzing everybody else, say, can't control whether they're going to be happy with my decision to, leave company or not, or I want to start this new product line, or this is a new initiative I really think is important. And so you taking responsibility for what you have control over and being clear on what are some of the things that you don't have control over. So that was a hard learning, but important to get. Integrity. I think this, again, we talked about this a bit, Rachel, you and I at the beginning. So doing what you say you're going to do and saying what you do. So like do your words and your actions, are they in alignment or not? And guess what? Sometimes we make a commitment and we can't meet it. And that's okay as long as we are honest about it and we can declare that. I tend to find that a lot of times people that I work with, sometimes the person that they're most out of integrity with is often themselves. It's like, I'm going to take better care. I'm going to get more sleep because I know it's important for my mental health. And then there's that 10 to 11:30 at night where we're binge watching Netflix when we know we should be actually sleeping. So how do we really get because this way you've made a decision once and you're going to follow it through to the best of your ability. When we're out of integrity, I find, especially because our cognitive bandwidth is so stretched and stressed right now, it's like you're constantly renegotiating with yourself. Yeah, I said I was going to do this, but I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, but tomorrow's not a good time. So, and like, how many micro decisions are you renegotiating with yourself? Does anybody relate to that? Any hands up here? I'm seeing some smiles. Okay, thank you there, Kelly. Okay, thank you, Tracy. Okay, good. So yeah, when we just say, I'm just going to, like, for a week, see if I could be impeccable with my integrity, and what would that feel like? Just try. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, great learning. You can figure out why you kind of fell off the wagon, and you can try again. Treat it like a game. It's not like, we sometimes treat everything as like with like a earnestness and heaviness. And gosh, that's really hard when you're getting buffeted by, external things in the world and internal things in your household and, whatever's going on at work. Okay, moving along, vision. Taking the time to really create and declare, what do you want? Sometimes we're really, really clear on what we don't want, but we don't really spend much time to say, but what I would really like is, I'd like to take Fridays off so I could have that creative artist state with myself, like Julia Cameron says I should do in The Artist's Way. So, and let that picture guide you through some of the daily challenges. So when you know what you're working towards, and it's hard in the moment, but you can remember and feel connected to that vision, it can magnetize you and also helps you to declare to other people who might help you to realize that vision. And they can come in and offer some support or some guidance to achieving it. And then finally, expression is, how do you express your feelings in such a way that it's healthy? So if you're feeling frustrated, maybe instead of eating all the cookies, I've done that, turning on some great music and just dancing like a fiend in your own living room for 2 dances. You get to choose, but how do you express that? There's it's not me, I didn't make this up, but that emotions are just energy in motion. And when we try to control them or tamp them down or deny them, or we're not honest about them, that's when they usually end up biting us in the butt. My one of the first mentors that I had in coaching, I did my coaching training with her, was Debbie Ford, who did a body of, is called integrative coaching. So very much, she used to have this great analogy of, we think we're being so clever and like, oh, I'm not really angry. She says, imagine it's like a beach ball and you're holding it under the water and you think that nobody can see that you've got that beach ball there. And we're like, yeah, it's really like that. She goes, great, except now you've got 50 beach balls that you're trying to hide from other people and manage how good you look and how, kind and compassionate you are. And what inevitably happens if you've ever held a beach ball underwater, it pops up and hits you in the face. So that's a little visual you can take with you. Any questions about these Thrive principles and what they mean? Do they resonate? Are they making some sense to you as like a bit of a framework here? Yeah? Okay, good.
It's so nice to have also an easy acronym to remember them by.
Yeah.
Because
So
yeah.
it isn't, so like you just, it takes a little bit to get that in there, but once you do, you won't forget it. And
Yeah.
so what I find is, so what I'd like you to do and how you can use this actively tool for yourself is when you're in a feeling of a challenge, I hope you've been thinking of one that you can share with your buddy in a moment, is to say, okay, thrive. So which one of these principles, if there was just one that I might need to dial up a little bit more that would be helpful for the situation, which one would it be? And what would be one action step I could do to make that happen? So you don't have to take them all on in every situation, but I find that, it's been a really useful tool for my coaching clients when we're working together to say, like, here's the 5 principles, or 6 principles, I can't even count. Is that right? 6, yes. Is to say which one do you feel is calling to you more right now? Oh my gosh, you know what? I've been so busy lately, I totally forgot about my vision. I think I'm just going to take 10 minutes and just really think about why I'm doing what I'm doing and what it was I want to achieve. Great, done. So it doesn't always have to be the big grandiose, I'm going to do these 10 priority things, Well, priority does only mean like, what's the one thing? And so just choose the one principle that you think could be useful for you. Okay. Rachel, anything you want to add to that before we invite people to go into a little breakout?
No, I don't think so. I would just invite people to ask any questions or to see, does this thrive principle, like, is there anything you would add, or does anything resonate, does it resonate with you?
Mhm. And when you come back, I mean, you might have a chance to sort of be able to answer that as well from a different perspective, having sort of talked it through with a buddy and in an application sense to a challenge that you might be facing. Does everybody have a challenge in mind? Yeah? Oh, good. Okay, so I'm just thinking, Rachel, in terms of timing, how about we make a group of 2 and a group of 3?
Okay, got it.
And so we'll just let you manage your time. So how much time do you think we should give them in a breakout? Like
Do we want to do how many?
6, 8 minutes?
Okay, that sounds
Yeah.
good.
Okay, we'll say 8. How's that? That'll take us to 10 because we're going to the half hour, right?
Yep.
Okay, so your assignment is, and maybe I'll just put this in the chat. So whoever has the longest hair gets to go first. One of you will have, keep a track of the time, and just, briefly share what's the challenge you're facing, the principle that's kind of calling to you, and then just get some feedback from your buddies in your discussion group about what they might add to that or what else they're noticing about your decision to develop resilience using these Thrive principles. Okay.
And this will be a really good time for you to utilize the skills that we talked about, or if last section where we did active listening. And so doing reflections, really focusing on listening and reflecting back what it is for the other person, not solving it for them. Okay, but using this as an active listening opportunity so that we're building on what we're learning on this course. Sound good? Okay. I'm going to pop you into breakout rooms right now.
We'll see you soon. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, so the
Cool followers, Catherine.
Do we have our other groups back, or is it just us 4?
well, the other one, they're going to come back. They had 3 people.
Okay.
So
Yeah, they
might,
should be back they won't have a choice. They'll be yanked. Here they come.
running the clock out.
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. And I know you probably felt like, oh, we could have used more time. Did you? Yeah. So, well, that's okay. We can continue some of the discussion here together. So, yeah, I think Rachel and I, we would just love to hear from, each of you ideally, what were some insights that you got from your breakout discussion, and feel free to share whether it was something you learned about having a framework like the Thrive principles, or if you want to just share specifically, I decided to focus on this because I'm working through this challenge. So whatever really was sort of most impactful for you from that conversation, we'd love to learn from you. So who would like to kick us off? And don't worry, you'll all get a turn. Yay, Kelly. Thank you.
I was talking at the beginning and in the small group about how I'm kind of at a fork in the road with the jobs that I do currently at Justice Court versus the travel industry, and there's a lot of unknowns heading into that part of I guess that industry. So I kind of latched onto vision because this has come down to for me is really what do I want in my life, and what accessibility do I want, what am I passionate about, and this framework has really allowed me to kind of hone in on that in particular, because I think that's really what drives me. The job doesn't really define who I am, but I have to be really passionate about it, and it has to line up with what I want in the day-to-day and in the bigger picture for me to really be happy there.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And one thing I want to just draw on here from Kelly's sharing is that, vision is something that we probably, and we don't need to just review it maybe at New Year's if we remember, but it's something that needs to be like a living, breathing, growing, evolving vision, just like you are. And Kelly, I just imagine you 2.5 years ago, you probably didn't have on your vision map, like, I'm going to go into the court system for a little while because there's going to be a pandemic, right? So you're hitting a reset button and a refresh on your vision. So yeah, that feels really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Any other comments for Kelly about that? Does that make sense to everybody? Good. Who'd like to go next?
So
Tracy.
I feel like that's sort of a good follow-up, and especially because Carolyn, you just said the word reset. So that's kind of where I'm at, is I'm kind of focused on resetting and reinventing myself after the last year and a half that had a lot of struggles, and and had me kind of questioning my values and the time and how I spend it, whether like between work and family. And so I'm also, I think, in this exploration visioning phase, and I know that that's what I want to do, but then it really kind of is a step before that in the integrity piece, in not saying what I'm going to do for others. Like, that's not a problem for me. I can do that. It's saying what I'm going to do for myself and then following through. And in this example, it's I'm going to carve out space for myself to spend time on this visioning, and like having that personal integrity for myself to follow through, to allow myself that creative space to vision and to explore. So.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, could anybody want to take a page off of Tracy's solution here of like maybe actually carving out some time for yourself in your busy lives? Whether it's for visioning or just to like put your feet up for a few minutes after this last several months of crazy, always running around like a chicken with her head cut off. Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. And I think that the, and this is why I think like a very simple framework and a reminder to put yourself in the picture in some way, right? Like you're hitting that reset button and making the space happen. Because otherwise you're going to end up being frustrated. It's almost like an act of self-sabotage in a way. It's like, I want this. No, I'm not going to give myself any time to do it or think about it or feel it or process it or polish it up the way I want it to be. I'm not going to live it a little. It's like, well, that's really not going to serve you. And it does need to start, like, I think, you are, like, when you give yourself that space and that grace, that was a word that came up earlier. That's where all the great impacts and all the changes that we want to see, all the stuff we want to see out there, if we're not willing to create a little tiny, filament of that in our own experience, then it's just then we're just doing mentalizing about the impact we want to make. Everybody else deserves it. But me, not so much. I should like try to shoehorn myself in there. So yeah, nice awareness there, Tracy. Who would like to go next?
I can go. I don't think mine are as powerful, but the principle I picked was honesty, because I had I'll call it a gut check this week on, really staying honest and true to yourself. So I had a challenge that very much supported that, and but really came out of left field, and feel like I left it in a space where I am being honest and representing who I am, but it was definitely a good challenge for the week.
A good challenge. Yeah, sounds like you were up on that board and that wave was a little more rogue than you had expected, huh? Had to recenter yourself. Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think this is another area where the more that we can give ourselves permission to really be honest and make requests or set boundaries or just be clear, like what's not going to work for us and what support we do ask for from other people. And again, that's kind of where like the honesty really does interact a lot with the integrity, like, because people will not, if we're not willing to set sort of some expectations or boundaries or clarity, what do we need for ourselves? And then we tell somebody that we want something and then we don't do it ourselves. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, she does, she says one thing, does another. So it's okay if I do the same thing, right? We train people how to treat us sometimes. I'm not saying that that's what happened in your situation, but I know that this honesty thing that is a tough one for a lot of people. So yeah, thanks, Catherine. Okay, Joanna and Shannon, you get to decide who gets to go next.
I can hop in.
Oh.
Oh,
go ahead.
Whatever.
Coin toss.
I want you to go, Joanna.
Sure. That's funny. Just because the challenge that I had shared with my group is that I frequently find it really challenging at work to jump into larger group settings and share thoughts. I feel like often in larger group settings, like there are multiple people talking at the same time, or I start to talk and someone else is talking, and then I just naturally tend to withdraw and to let the other person go. And I've been told by multiple people, like in communications workshops, to just like keep talking, like, and that it's really more in my mind that I'm being a disruption. And so the principles that I was going with were like trust in myself, trust in the value of what I have to contribute and to say, and then also just like believing, I think, the feedback that I get from other people, which is that my thoughts are valuable, my contributions are, wanted, and that really can't just be in my head, that I think that I don't know, being rude and disruptive by continuing to talk over someone else when it's really okay to do that.
Wow. I mean, that was incredible that you actually had a little microcosm experience of that right here, right now on this call when you're going to share. I mean, I should have handled that a little bit differently so you didn't have that experience. I mean, it's kind of perfect that here you are, you just spoke up and you're, doing exactly what you felt like you needed to do to sort of deal with this. Anybody else relate to having like a bigger conversation sometimes internally? We're like, it's my turn to talk. Well, you already, like it's not going to be valuable enough. It's not a big deal. Do you have to? So all of that stuff, this is really great to use with that. So just if you can imagine like that little inner critic voice, and just notice it, say, oh yeah, there you are. I get it. And I remember I did an exercise one time because I was having a big conversation with my inner critic. It was quite, this was actually before I started my coaching practice. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like I was hearing all sorts of nasty things like, you're never going to, like, you just had your third child. You look like, well, I was like nasty stuff. And I thought, oh, I'm going to work with this. So I actually got a journal, like a piece of paper. I was working as a development director at the time. And I just kept a list of some of the things that I was hearing. And it was a little bit shocking that first day. And I was like, oh, okay, day 2, we'll see what happens. I didn't write down a single thing. And it wasn't because I forgot. It's because the voice wasn't there anymore. And it was almost like I just needed to pay some amount of attention and not feel totally controlled by or confronted. It's like, well, this is interesting. Oh, wow, I'm really dissing my postpartum body. Huh, sounds kind of mean. All right, what else? What else you got in there? And so that act of just noticing and also externalizing it through the journaling kind of freed up my, they call that disidentification. Because when we hold all this stuff in our minds, it can really, it's like a pinball machine, like it's just like pinging back and forth, and it kind of gets amplified. So if you ever find yourself, any of you, you may want to try, like thinking, how can I externalize this spiraling negative critical thought and just park it somewhere and see what happens. So anyway, that's very cool, Joanna. Glad you spoke up. And thanks, Shannon, for giving Joanna the chance to experience some of that exact little roughness point she's been working on.
Yeah,
so
it was funny because we were in the same small group. So I was like, it's yours, go.
Great. So what did you discover in your breakouts?
The challenge I'm actively going through right now is I'm being promoted at work, which is a very, very exciting time and something that I knew I wanted when I started with this company. However, it's complicated because the promotion is coming from the owners of the company and not from my direct manager. It was kind of done around her, which is a very, very awkward and challenging situation when you're hearing from leadership, you deserve this, you're going to be great. And then I was telling my small group, I was talking to my boss today because I'm really curious as to why she's not supportive of it. And I have this list of 6 reasons that she went through, and I bravely listened to her today and just tried to absorb everything. So that's my challenge. And it was hard for me to choose one Thrive principle in this situation. But I think I'm going to go with trust. And I trust myself that I deserve this, that I worked hard for this, and that no matter what she says, it's her perspective, and I'll listen to it always, but I'm not going to let it deter me from what I'm trying to accomplish for myself and the organization. So I guess actioning, I'm really going to be strong in all of our conversations, and I'm going to receive feedback, but I'm going to be true to myself that I know I'm here for a reason.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a really, really powerful choice, to really trusting yourself and that you have some value and it's been recognized. And I mean, the other one it's kind of jumping out at me as well for you to consider is also responsibility. Yeah, you're responsible for your thoughts, words, and actions. She's having some stuff about her nose being out of joint, possibly. Yep, that's what's happening for her. And you're gonna do you, right? And
yep,
with all the capability that earns you that promotion. Yeah, great. So as we have about 10 minutes or so left. What we can do is we can just open up any general questions, comments, maybe some more application kinds of issues, other insights that have sort of come up for you. This is really your time to, what else can we support you with in terms of resiliency? And has this been useful? Does a framework like this make sense as a tool to have in your toolkit of authentic leadership? Let's just open it up for some discussion.
Question.
Yeah.
I think, Shannon, you said that a few of them resonated with you, and I think a couple of other folks said that some of the principles resonated as well. And that's the same for me. It was hard to decide. And I guess I'm just wondering, I know that you just pick what you gravitate towards, but in your experience, is there ever like a recommended starting place if someone just really doesn't know?
It's a great question. And I think it's so the short answer is no, there's no really one recommended starting place. It is kind of an individual thing. And I would say, if you're really feeling stuck, just drop your pen on one and just see what it lands on and just try that. And you could try another one the next day. So it almost doesn't really matter. I think what, like, the order of it is not as important as you giving yourself something to focus on, to start to shift the energy and that feeling of stuckness that sometimes happens when we're feeling that challenge, when we're feeling not resilient, where we're feeling kind of locked up and maybe a bit, like I'm kind of maybe paralyzed. So it's like, and that's the thing, I think too, when, and you can share with me if you believe this or not, is sometimes we are so conscientious and we really try to think our way through a solution, but we don't know. We don't know until we actually put some energy and some motion in some direction. Say, oh, wait, so I'm moving, but it's not the right, oh, I'm going to move this way. So it's easier to adjust and align in a way that's more where you want to be going when you're actually already started some momentum in some direction. But when you're in that place of stuckness, I think a big trap for people is just to stay very mental and intellectual about it. So, I mean, honestly, many years ago, one of my most popular blog articles I wrote was about being in this place of stuckness. And I wrote, and I shared a before and after picture of my sock drawer. I just decided I felt like out of control and like didn't know what I needed to do. So I went and I organized my sock drawer. I felt like a hero after that. And I very proudly shared this after picture, because just that little act of saying, I'm just gonna put on a couple songs, I'm gonna clean my sock drawer because I just feel like a loser right now. And lo and behold, that little act sort of got me excited enough to then finally send that email that I'd been procrastinating about. That got me excited to then make the phone call. So you just never know where these things come from. But to me, I think a lot about us as a holistic person. I know Rachel talks about that as well with her framework, like we're whole people. And it's not just about what's happening at the neck up, it's what's happening with our heart, our hands. So put one of those elements into motion in some way. And if you hear your brain say, well, that's really dumb, like why, like she's organizing her sock drawer, we're supposed to learn something from that. It's like, yeah, just try it, just find that thing that's kind of calling your attention and just put a little gentle fun. And I mean, one of you offered that great word, humor and grace. Absolutely, choose that.
Yeah,
so thanks for the question.
I appreciate that. I think what I realized with this tool is it's worth sharing with folks at my workplace, because we've had conversations of people feeling stuck, especially because of the weight of the conditions in the last year and a half. And so we talked about how do we help people get unstuck? That's exactly what we've been talking about. And so it was great for you to kind of explain, if someone was stuck on this,
Yeah.
what to recommend
Look,
for getting past that.
you can put it up in the lunchroom and just like throw a dart at one of them, and that'll, that could do it, right?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Who else? Comments, questions, insights?
I was curious. I think one of my struggles is giving myself the space to focus on things like this. I feel like my life is constantly so noisy and so busy, and I want to be super intentional about sitting down and literally just giving myself 15 minutes to focus on me, like giving myself that gift. But I find that really, really challenging. And I'm wondering if you have any recommendations on how to, you mentioned the journal, but other ways that you can kind of fold this into your day naturally, where it's manageable and actionable. Because even just getting to this class is just so hard for me. And I want to have the space for this stuff, but I'm finding it really challenging.
Yeah. Anybody else relate to that? Like, how do I make time for myself? Or how do I do, like, I know there's things I should be doing, and yeah. And this is, what Stephen Covey, often talks about in his, quadrant, what's important, what's urgent, the quadrant of things that are important, but not urgent. So to create some time where we can have some intention, but like, there's no deadline for like, have you got your journal entry done today? Like, nobody's going to be quizzing you on that. So it's all very self-generated, isn't it? I think one strategy that I could recommend to all of you is to imagine it not necessarily having to be like something that's absolutely separate in your schedule, although that is nice if you can, whether it's waking up early or even just 5 minutes at the end of your day, whatever you can do with some level of consistency is better than nothing at all. But try to think of it as like, how can I integrate some of this awareness or intentionality into my everyday practices, into my everyday life? So I'm just imagine, say, before you get on a Zoom call for a meeting, that you take a minute and just take some deep breaths, and just take 5 deep breaths, and then you log into the Zoom call. That could be enough to sort of just shift your nervous system slightly, slow your amygdala down from, driving you as it has been for all of us for the last 18, 19 months now. It's just been like screaming at us. So this is why, we are, living in a state of really, it's not just stress, but it's been chronic stress. And that does impact our moods. It does impact our cognitive ability. It impacts our level of resilience. So when we have something that you weren't expecting, maybe like Catherine had, or somebody else had, where, I had one today myself, and I was like, it took me a while to move through it, and honestly, I'm not sure I have, but it's like, our reservoirs of like calm and peace and Zen, I think they've been really, it's like, there's been a hole in the bathtub, like for the last 2 years almost. So even just, taking a few breaths, you can rub your, like, just bring your focus to something like even just rubbing your fingers together for like 30 seconds can also kind of just shift the focus and help you to activate more readily that prefrontal cortex of your brain, rather than operating more from, the other regions of your brain that are not, the higher executive function. So does that help, Shannon? Yeah. Okay, great. Great question.
Yeah,
Rachel?
the other thing, Shannon, is you can, and I think it's a similar thing of the integration, but you can start to add things into your morning routine. So if, you drink your coffee or your breakfast while you're running around and doing other things, that moment for yourself could be, I'm actually just going to sit here and only eat my breakfast. I'm not going to read the paper. I'm not going to listen to the news. I'm not going to do 12 other things at the same time, or I'm not going to eat while I drive, whatever it is, and start to open up that space so that you can begin, and it also, I have a curiosity around what it means to you to take time for yourself. I don't know. I'm curious what you mean by that. What does that look like? What would your ideal take time for myself be?
Perfect example. I got my hair done today and I was working the whole time. I just don't ever turn it off.
Yeah. So it would be, then trying to practice things like if it is the breakfast or when you are going there to get your hair done, to just see what it's like to sit with it, knowing that everything that's waiting for you is still going to be there. And what Carolyn's talking about, giving your brain a rest and that little bit of rejuvenation, and even doing the sock folding. Okay, that was a beautiful mindfulness activity that took her to a very focused place where then she could let some of this other stuff in her brain shake out, right? So kind of get out of the worry zone, get out of what we call our lizard brain rather than our new brain. And that's when we don't feel like we have any time, when we're constantly in threat mode and stress mode. So you can practice that in these, exactly what Carolyn's saying, these little ways, but start integrating, like breaking out some of these, your coffee is like only coffee time or only breakfast time. And it'll be painful at first, not gonna lie. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's the other part that I'd like to add about resiliency. We have this way of talking about resiliency in our culture as if it's easy to be resilient. Resilient people just bounce back. Resiliency is really about going through the challenging things, like say that Kathy talked about. She did something, she chose honesty, and it was hard and it hurt probably. And she might have felt really like a gaping or like a heaviness or whatever, where she's feeling the sensation in her body. But it was what she had to face in order to move forward in a way that lives with her values, which, you did a values sort in this course earlier, a couple weeks ago. So resiliency, and I love the Thrive principles because it helps you remember, I can do these 6 things and I can also feel what it feels like to get knocked down on my butt. And then I'm gonna, I think of it as a rock climbing kind of thing, right? I'm gonna, or an ice pick. I'm gonna put my ice pick up and it's landing in honesty right now. And honesty could be, I honestly need to just make some time for myself while my hair is getting done and see what does it feel like when the hairdresser pulls on my hair to cut it, or that nice getting yours. Oh my God, if I could have someone wash my hair every day, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
So lovely, right?
Yeah.
But so that's the other thing I guess I think is really important for us to remember. Resiliency can be that you could struggle, you can struggle. It's not like, oh, they said that horrible thing and skippity doo dah, I don't care what you think of me, right? It's, yeah, my inner critic is going to get alarmed and it's going to say, oh my God, they're so right about me, because that's what our mind is set up to do. It's set up to keep us safe. And but these Thrive principles really can help you kind of anchor into something to help you get through.
And I just want to underscore one thing, that Rachel said about, resiliency. It's not easy. It's not in the best of times. And we've gone through, and we're still in it, a pretty intense time of change. So, it could be the pedal to the metal. I got to take everything on and respond and react to things. It could be that our gears are a little bit stuck, because that's the mode that we've had to operate in, especially in the early parts of this pandemic. Different parts of the country, different countries, we have different responses. So our experiences might be a little bit different from one another, but I think that there is that stress in our individual systems. And also we're picking up the collective angst and stress from other people around us too. So if you have any sort of sense of emotional awareness, intuition. So sometimes that sense of stress or resistance, it might not even be yours. You might be carrying a lot of it for your company or your colleagues or your family. So, and this is why, we started with, it's not easy, and it's just a choice that you get to make every day. And some days you'll make it easily, other days it won't be that easy. But what matters is, can we start to find ways to make those choices, recognize when we've fallen off the surfboard a little more quickly, or when we're about to lose our balance, maybe we catch ourselves a little bit sooner than we did a month ago. And that's great. I think that that's what this game of life is about. Is like, it's great to make mistakes. The only problem is if we keep making the same ones over and over and over and again. And hopefully, the Thrive principles and, conversations like this about how do we lead ourselves in authentic ways and, make a difference that we're here to make. I think we're all, we all have that in common. So if we're not making mistakes on the way, then we're going to still. So
Well,
I'll turn it over to you, Rachel, because I know we're at time.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's just fun to have you here. You're a wealth of knowledge, and yeah, it's just great. And I appreciate everyone
pleasure.
showing. Yeah, I'm glad that those of you who were able to make it made it today, and hopefully, and know that I'm happy to continue the conversation with any of you. I am available to do one-on-one chats with, or you can send me emails and we can dive into some of this information a little bit more if you need to, if that's helpful for you. So yeah, well, thank you so much.
Great.
And yeah, Carolyn, thank you. And
My pleasure. It's very nice to meet all of you. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
have a great night. And right, next week we are off because it's the time we get to eat all our delicious
Eating all that food I won't be having next
all
week.
that food, and then we'll start up again the week after.
Great.
Okay. Bye bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Best wishes.